Alright, strangers, bit of a different video today. This one isn't going to be so much of a, well-structured video essay. It's going to be like a series of complaints preceded by a look behind the curtain. So, I just put out a few weeks ago my What is the Appeal of Magic the Gathering video. Why people play it, right? And I had that video planned as my first video coming back because, frankly, it was really easy to make while still meeting my standards of quality over what is a good point that I think is worth putting on this channel. The point of the video was to ease me back into video creation. I didn't want to massively challenge myself all at once. I wanted to give myself room to breathe and make mistakes. I mean, in the last video, you could literally see the tip of my microphone at the bottom of the shot, which you won't this time, because if you do, I will re-record this entire thing, I swear to God. Now, I wrote that video back in September, when I was planning on coming back to the channel a little earlier than I actually did, and ever since I wrote that video, Magic, on the whole, has kind of completely fallen apart. The back half of 2019 was a disaster for pretty much every format of Magic, with maybe the exception of Commander. And 2019 itself was a year in Magic of awesome highs and also pitiful lows. And given all that data, I don't really feel ethically right making an entire video trying to get you into this game, essentially, or can be read as me, telling people to get in this game, without doing a counterbalance of why you should run for the hills and never play this thing in your entire life. I'm going to try and make these points as wide and sweeping as I can, while still making this video accessible for people who have never played Magic. So if that's you, do not click away. I hope you'll be entertained. That's my go. Magic the Gathering is made by a company named Wizards of the Coast, owned by Hasbro, and I'm going to show off a few points of how throughout 2019 they kind of bungled and ruined most parts of their entire game. No real connecting issue, we're just going to raw dog it. Starting with Part 1, Ruining Formats. Okay, to keep things as simple as possible, Magic has different formats where you play with different cards, usually with cards that were printed within a set time frame. The premier format that Wizards of the Coast wants us to play is called Standard. It's where the bulk of their resources go to developing and promoting. At the beginning of 2019, there were two other big competitive formats that were very popular. There's Modern, which used to be the most popular format, where you play with every card since 2003 with a very large ban list. And then there's Legacy, where you play with every card ever printed since 1993 with a hecka large ban list. Over the course of 2019, each of these formats was ruined to the point of needing multiple bans. A decision was made within Wizards of the Coast Research and Development to make the cards released in 2019 have an intentionally higher power level than the ones of the years before. Side note, I came into the game in 2018 and I think a powered down Standard is great. The way I understand it, part of the appeal of Modern and Legacy is that you could have the same deck for years and only make just little tweaks here and there and still have a fun time. And over the course of 2019, both of these formats were turned upside down, needing multiple bans to keep them under control, keep them fun, keep them competitive. Just to give some perspective on how powerful the 2019 cards were, Legacy, remember, that's the format where you play with every card in the game with a very large ban list. You've got the most powerful stuff ever printed to wield in your hands, alright? That format had tournaments in 2019, and some of the winning decks in those tournaments had half their cards in their deck, excluding lands, be printed in 2019. Modern got an even worse treatment, requiring even more bans, and what I hear was even more miserable play experience. But hey, I care about Standard and Historic. So let's talk about how in 2019, Wizards of the Coast fucked up Standard so bad that I kind of don't have confidence in their ability to ever make it good again. And let's talk about how they did it twice. Part 2, Field of the Dead. Field of the Dead is one of the funnest cards I've ever played with. I love the design, I love the play pattern, I genuinely enjoy this card. It was released on July the 12th as part of the M20 standard, and take it from me, back then it was very fun to play with while not really being oppressive. M20 standard was really fun. Mono red and Field of the Dead decks just kind of put a limit on the format. They made it so that every deck that was playable had to find a way to get on the board and close out games. This is a kind of Magic that I really enjoy. It's not that I hate control, I just need you to play a win condition, brah. And then rotation happened. This is how standard works. The idea behind standard is that it is a curated experience. By taking cards out of it and only keeping a select pool in it, things are better. Things don't get out of hand. It is a more enjoyable experience. A year's worth of cards exited the format on October 4th. Throne of Eldraine standard. Field of the Dead did not leave. But all the cards that held it in check did. Field of Ruin, gone. Blood Sun, gone. Alpine Moon, gone. It's funny because when these cards were in standard, they barely had anything to do. And now that they had a use, they were ripped away from us. I cannot fathom why within R&D this wasn't seen as a problem. And they explicitly printed a land tutor in the same set that could get you that card. This essentially meant that you could run 8 copies of Field of the Dead in your deck, making it incredibly consistent. Now, anyone who plays competitive games will tell you that what makes a character or strategy powerful is not just its ability to win, but other people's inability to stop it from winning. A lack of counterplay. And the problem with Field of the Dead was that there was just so little effective counterplay against it. We were left using, like, unmoored egos, assassin's trophies, Tectonic Rift. Tectonic Rift was a playable card in standard, and I cannot express to you people who don't play Magic how stupid and insane that was. Now maybe even with all the counterplay, Field of the Dead would have still been too strong for standard. Maybe it was just purely a design mistake. Thing is, we never got to find out. What baffles me most about the situation is how many different mistakes had to be made in order for them to allow this. Did they forget you could have multiple on the field at the same time? Did they forget you could effectively run 8 copies? Did they forget that they took all of the good land hate out of the format? This is biased and opinionated, but to me it seems like an act of pure incompetence. Mythic Championship 5. The biggest tournament of the season, featuring the best players of the game. A third of the decks were built around Field of the Dead. The card was banned the next Monday, not knowing what a fresh hell it would unleash. Part 3. Oko, Thief of Crowns. 2011 was one of Magic's most infamous and consequential years. It too was a year of highs and lows. Stoneforge Mystic combined with Jace the Mind Sculptor and a few of her cards to create a oppressive deck known as Caw Blade, which eventually became about, I think, 40% of the competitive format. The deck was so oppressive that it made Jace the Mind Sculptor one of the most iconic and feared Magic the Gathering cards of all time. And the deck was so powerful that it brought the first standard bannings in over half the decade, banishing Jace from the format. And Jace was so feared that when Modern became a thing later that year, he was just automatically put onto the ban list for that format. Magic soldiered on. Things got better. Standard bans were scant and far between. 2017 got a little rough, but things calmed down. With bated breath, Jace was unbanned in Modern, and while the card was powerful, it didn't warp the format like it had before. We all breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that it would never get that bad again, and it being nice that there is a definitively best Planeswalker in the entire game, as of September of 2019. Enter Oko, Thief of Crowns. Okay, I am recording this video on March 6th of 2020, and I'm just gonna list off this card standing in every format it was ever legal in. Standard, banned. Brawl, banned. Historic, restricted. Pioneer, banned. Modern, banned. Legacy, legal. Commander, legal. Vintage, legal. Barely being out for half a year, Oko FIFA Crowns is gonna go down as one of the biggest mistakes the Wizards of the Coast ever made, buddy. It's been admitted by R&D this card was not only made intentionally strong, but it was changed late in its development. Caution was thrown to the wind. In Standard, not only was it powerful all on its own, but it was slotted into the two colors that have been pulling away from the others in power level over the course of the last few months. During the last year, blue and green have been given every part of the puzzle. You can see me complaining about this if you go back 8 months on my Twitter. No one card was to blame. Instead, it was a series of efficient bricks that built an unsurmountable wall, capped off by the implacable Oko. Alright, let me explain for the uninitiated why this card is powerful. The card comes down early, usually too early to counter it. His high loyalty makes him difficult to kill, and he can protect himself all on his own. It's hard to neutralize him without losing out on resources. For me personally, the most egregious thing about Oko's design is that he is in some way good against almost every basic archetype of magic you can be up against. Are you against burn? He gains you life. Are you against aggro? He makes you infinite blockers. Are you against control? He makes you infinite attackers. Are you against creature or artifact-based combo? He can turn them into worthless 3/3s with no abilities. This guy has removal on a plus ability! And unlike lots of other planeswalkers that people love to bitch and moan about, this guy can win the game all on his own. No other cards required. It would be one thing if the card just gained you too many resources, but Oko actively made the game less fun. Oko's ability strips artifacts and creatures of their abilities, essentially turning 2/3 of the cool permanents in the game into rote, meaningless fodder. Never mind the fact that this card was released in a set that featured a series of powerful legendary artifacts. When Field of the Dead was legal, Oko decks were the only thing that could compete with it while still beating everything else. And when the October 21st bannings came, there was nothing holding Oko back. I remember those weeks. I remember playing Oko in those weeks. I don't know scientifically how bad it got. I heard things about how Oko decks making up 60% of the format. By this point, they had added black because the only matchup that mattered being competitive against was the mirror. And they would pre-sideboard for the mirror, because even if you didn't go up against the mirror and 8 of the deck cards in your deck were just useless in every other matchup, it wouldn't matter because all of the other cards were just that good. It wasn't until November 18th that a stop was put to the madness. Oko was a mythic rare planeswalker from the latest set, the least likely card to get banned, and yet it was, along with 2 other powerful green cards that had helped get a color far too out of control. Bannings are seen by Wizards of the Coast as pretty much an ultimate example of its failure, and this certainly was. And what did it leave in its wake? Throne of Eldraine was so grindy and slow of people trying to set up these endless value engines. There was really only one good aggro deck, and it featured more like a combo deck. So far, Theros Beyond Death has been markedly better, much better, I would say. There's a lot of fun decks to play, a lot of fun decks that I enjoy playing. Blue-white control came and went, and it still feels like there's places to take the format. But regardless of how healthy Standard is now, the mess that was Throne of Eldraine shakes my confidence in Wizards' ability to produce a consistently fun Standard. And that's all made worse by the fact that Part 4. Magic Arena sucks ass. In 2002, a piece of software was released called Magic the Gathering Online. It was the client where you could play Magic the Gathering, like every format in it, online. It looks like this. Yikes. MTGO looks like ass. This is not a controversial opinion. It's not shiny, it's not fun looking, it's not a game, it's a series of spreadsheets with a competition attached. There is no reason for people who aren't already diehard Magic players to be attracted to and want to play this. It was the release and massive success of Hearthstone that really rubbed salt in the wound. Here was a game that many people thought was worse of a game than Magic, getting all of this attention just because it had an incredibly slick interface and was incredibly attractive to play. Why couldn't Magic be like this? And it's obvious just in an immediate glance at it that Arena was created to compete with Hearthstone. It borrowed much from that game's aesthetic, with the sound effects and animations in it designed to draw new players in. The nature of the display made it easier to stream and show off to new players, and it also made an easier job at showing what was going on in the game. Trust me, people have been complaining about Arena since the game's inception, but by the end of 2019, a lot of those complaints felt a lot more reasonable. The game went out of open beta, it officially launched, and it is still a massive unfinished software. The game has grown and changed tremendously over the course of me playing it, but the way it's grown and the pace of that growth has not exactly been reassuring. Because when Arena was in alpha or beta, people put up with a lot of lackluster features because, we assumed that fixes were coming. For reference, this is a piece of software that has millions of downloads. It is the site of a professional esport, and it has people spending collectively millions of dollars in in-app purchases on it. And it wasn't until 3 months ago that it implemented a friends list. A friends list. That thing that, like, every online game ever has had. In the December developer update, the feature of sending a deck list to a friend, of taking a deck you own, you built, taking its list, and sending that list of cards to someone on your friend list, was said to be more than 6 months away. Last summer, there was a massive spike in lag and game crashes, which has mostly been fixed, but it's undoubtable that more and more animations and moving parts are being put in this game, which is going to tax it more. The complaints players have are near endless. The game still hasn't implemented a real draft mode. It still won't let you favor lands. It still only really has Brawl on Wednesdays. There are still like 3 game modes. There's still a lack of competitive tournaments held on the platform. You can't really still set up your own tournament purely for the client. More worrying is how little focus there is on getting older sets into the game, and what progress there is on that front came after screaming and screaming from the fans to get development put into that. Everyone knows this is going to take years. But it seems that there's no push for Arena to replace online, and a lot of people, myself included, got into Arena thinking that was like the goal and point when the software launched. And maybe that's our bad for assuming. But what's not our bad is noticing that the biggest thing that gets updated is the storefront, and making it easier and easier to further monetize and nickel and dime players out of playing the game. That, again, isn't always fun. Things are getting better. Hasbro is bringing more people onto the game. They seem to be integrating more with R&D. I am hopeful. But it's hard to invest more and more into this game when it doesn't look like it's getting a lot of investments of its own. Part 5. Story Bad. War of the Spark was supposed to be the big, glorious Magic the Gathering story moment. 5 years of narrative built up to one moment, and yeah, it was emotionally cathartic, but it was also like simple and juvenile and bad. A lot of it was kind of really badly handled, like the death and resurrection of Niv Mizzet, which is supposed to be this giant sheer awesome story moment that helps defeat Nicol Bolas, his death wasn't even featured in the previous set, which would have been like an awesome oh shit moment to lead in Vraska's storyline after the brilliance that was the storytelling in Ixalan was dropped. I know, like, me and only 4 other people care about that, but it was really sad to say. And what it all paid off to was the plot of what was essentially like a 6 out of 10 Marvel movie. Worse are the books. Now, I get that you can't tell the entire story through the cards, but this is just sad. It's fine to have ebooks and have actual books. They get published, but these two were supposed to tell the full canon story of War of the Spark, and they are bad. Full disclosure, call me a hypocrite and a lazy guy. I have not read these novels because I have a lot of on my plate and I am not wasting money on them. But it is really hard to find a review of them that is not scathingly negative. Search up YouTube videos about these books on this year platform, and you will find people commenting on incredibly poor prose, juvenile construction, without much care for the complexities of the characters. Fans were harsher on the second book, which featured a forced decanonization of the love interest between Chandra and Nissa that had felt very natural and built up by the sets before it. And ostensibly, this decision was made to pander to a homophobic Chinese audience. And again, for all of the actual work that did go into it, War of the Spark has the plot of like a 6 out of 10, maybe 7 out of 10 Marvel movie. It's competent, but it abandoned the really cool inter-guild tension that had been set up in the previous 2 sets, and it just featured a bunch of heroes coming together to defeat the bad guy with some betrayal and sacrifice thrown in. Everybody teams up to beat the big bad. Yay! The set right after it made a big deal about fleshing out Chandra, and 2 of the cards actually featured and highlighted interesting parts of her backstory. But then you have the finale, Chandra Awaken Inferno, and like, when is this? I mean, I get it, it's cool, it's a really powerful card, and Chandra can't be restrained, her glory is inevitable, this is why the card can't be countered, very flavorful, but like, does this take place before War of the Spark or after? And why are you making us care about Chandra? Is she about to go and like do something big? She had her big moment in Kaladesh block that was supposed to be about her. She bested Dovin on War of the Spark. So like, what's her deal? What's going on? When Theros Beyond Death released, most of the story wasn't told through the cards. And the story article that was put up for it didn't even have an author name attached to it, which says something. I want to make it clear that I think that Magic the Gathering has some absolutely god-tier, phenomenal character designs in it, and some really fun characters that I love learning about and getting to know. And they make people who are attractive and cool and compelling. But so far, it hasn't been made clear they're gonna, like, do something with these characters. If any of that makes sense. Part 6. I've complained a lot. Maybe you think I'm just bitching and whining for no reason. That's fair. Let me know. I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. But the real reason all of this matters is that Magic is a very expensive hobby. This game costs a lot of money to play. Wizards wants to push Standard as the format that everybody plays the most, and a competitive Standard deck can cost like $200 these days. Way more in older formats. I play a lot of Commander where $50 is considered low price for a deck. And the premier cards that allow you to do the real nutty stuff can often cost dozens of dollars each. Keeping up with Standard can cost over $100 a set, and that's if you're playing digitally, not in paper where you can just double that budget. Now, in the community, there is a large focus on budget deck building that lets you have fun for not a lot of money. But that is not the way the company incentivizes you to play. A few months ago, Pioneer shook up the entirety of Magic. It was a brand new format using all of the cards pretty much since like 2012 onward. I cannot express to you how excited people was for this. Financially, it was actually really good for a lot of people because it breathed new value into previously unused cards. And for the last months of 2019, it felt like the positivity surrounding Pioneer is the only thing that was keeping Magic like afloat. It was the medicine for the sickness of Oko ripping apart every format. It felt like you could do anything, like every color had cool things in it. There was control, there was aggro, there was big stuff, there was these like fun engines. It was interesting. I didn't even play it. I just watched it and I had a blast doing that. And Theros Beyond Death has rendered Pioneer asunder. Now it's a bog of uninteractive combo decks. It went from a format where it felt like there were infinite possibilities to very finite amount of decks that are really going to get things done. Again, not an expert in Pioneer. I'm sure a lot of people love playing it now, but a lot don't. Maybe one day it'll get better, maybe one day it won't, but this is all to illustrate the fact that you can sink hundreds upon hundreds of dollars into a format. And remember, I said one of the good things about Magic is that it was always shifting, but sometimes you can invest so much into your hobby for it to just be ruined. This game can easily end up in a position that you will not find very fun. The stakes are high and I want you to know them. Get into Magic. I won't say anyone shouldn't. The game can be hella fun, but it can also be long, grindy, like any two-player game. You're gonna lose a lot. Sometimes you go to the card shop to play and the people there aren't exactly fun or nice or interesting or sociable. Maybe I'm just jaded. Maybe I'm just burnt. Maybe I'm just like too far down the hole of the spent cost fallacy. You know, play Arena if you want. Be prepared to spend some money. Play Commander in paper, but like only do it if you got friends. Go to card shops cold if you are just desperate for human interaction, which to be fair, if you're watching my channel, is statistically quite likely. Maybe it's not. I am awash in assumptions. This video kind of petered out. I'm sorry about that. It's a weird one because it was birthed really out of more obligation than creative ideas. I thought it was kind of good towards the beginning, but then it went on and on. Now I'm just like, no, we do not bitch out here. We bring it back. Okay, give me one more. See, Magic, the thing about Magic is it's big. It's old and it's dense. You can surround yourself in this game. Magic is over 25 years old. You've got over half a dozen formats, all with different metas, many of which play totally differently. You can play it online at all hours of the day with millions of people. You got thousands upon thousands of cards telling hundreds of stories, hundreds of artists, mechanics, characters, a competitive scene playing thousands of beautiful and intricate interactive games. You can watch people play Magic on Twitch and YouTube. You can watch them when you're going to sleep. You can watch them when you wake up in the morning. You can argue with people about it on forums and discords. You can write fan fiction. You can go to conventions. You can participate in every social event at your local game store. You can consume weeks and weeks worth of podcasts and analysis about the game. You can hang on to every twist and turn of spoiler season. The history is so great and the game changes so often. And there's so much built around it. You can drown yourself in it. You can make it your whole world. Don't. I don't. Maybe I did for a moment. It's funny how it gradually pulls you in, right? Like with one new thing after another. I see people do that with anime, with working out, with movies, with anything. Look, Magic's great. Magic sucks dick. Just like anything else. Look at whether or not it appeals to you. You know, weigh the pros and the cons. Have a vast array of hobbies, and for Jesus' sake, take care of yourself, hang out with good people, Even if I don't always. So, that is actually gonna be it. If you want to find me, please follow me on Twitter. I love it when people do that. I actually try and make it fun for people. In the comments, tell me what you like and hated about Magic in 2019, or just tell me how your day is going. I have been Wyatt the Word Weaver. I'm gonna get on making the next video. I got some big stuff coming up, and y'all be good.